Welcome, everyone, and help me welcome in Terry Boyle McDougall. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer.
I'm so glad that you could make it here today to speak with us and tell us a little bit about the book that you authored that is making such an impact on professionals' lives these days, as well as what's behind that and the inspiration of it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are gearing up to cross over into the legal work world, you're leaving student mode, you're leaving testing mode, and you're going into full-time career building mode, you definitely want to hear what Terry has to say today. She is author of the book Winning the Game at Work, right? And it is almost a definitive guide on how you need to flip your mindset so that you can really succeed with the right rules of the game. So I'm going to let Terry dive on in with all of this and inform us and educate us on what we need to be aware of if you really want to grasp success and happiness at work. Terry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a career and executive coach, and I work with professionals who are successful but not quite satisfied. And my purpose is really to help people maximize that overlap between their professional success and their personal happiness.
Wow, that sounds very deep.
Yeah, well, I am a reformed high achiever, or
Mm.
overachiever, maybe I should say, where I was always really good at school. And I
Mhm.
thought that once I got into the workplace, that if I just did the same thing in the workplace that I did at school, that I would be successful. And
Mhm.
what I found was that there were some things that were going on around me in the workplace that I couldn't quite get my head around. I felt like I was working hard, felt like I was very smart. I thought that I had talent, but yet I would see people surpassing me at work who did not seem to be playing by the rules that I was playing by.
Wow.
And I think lucky for me, I along the way had some good mentors, and I actually eventually ended up hiring some coaches as well
Mhm.
that helped me sort of pull back the veil of what really goes on at work and what's really valued in the workplace.
Mhm.
And in fact, I think some of the things that you need to do to be successful in the workplace are sometimes a little bit counterintuitive to what we think, and they're not necessarily the same things that get us ahead when we're in school.
Wow. Well, I definitely want to ask you about what are those counterintuitive things. But before we jump into that, can you tell us about how you started learning about these rules and what was happening in your life at the time that really just ignited your need to figure this out?
Well, I would say that I learned about them gradually over time, but I do write about some of the things that happened in my career where I learned certain lessons along the way. And just as an example, when I first got out of college, I worked for a publishing company. And I actually, even though I had a degree in economics, this is back in the 80s, I started off as an administrative assistant in the sales department. And after working in my job for about a year, my boss had promised me that I would get a promotion into marketing coordinator, and I was so excited to, get out of the admin pool.
Right.
And unfortunately for me, he had a run-in with the new president of the company, and he got fired.
Ah.
And when his replacement came in, I had an assumption that I still was going to get the promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And the new guy came in and ended up hiring somebody from outside,
Oh.
and I was so disappointed, and I felt like very, very much cheated because I had put my time in at the company. And I write about this in the book, that I realize now when I look back that the new guy didn't see me as anything special. He didn't know me. I was actually, sort of the protege, I guess, of his um, the person who had the role before him. So he really didn't have any political reason to promote me. He wanted to bring in his own people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just like a small lesson that you learn as you go through your career.
Mm-hmm.
And So anyway, sorry,
No,
I
no,
could
that's
talk
just
about these
fun.
lessons quite a lot, but there are a lot of things like that that initially, when they first happen, I would look and say, why is that? I feel like I'm doing all of the right things. I'm playing by the quote unquote rules. But as you know, you start to understand people's sort of political motivations, and you know, when you get into that and you see the game within the game, that's when you can begin to start playing by the actual rules of the game and not the ones that got you ahead in school.
So, is the game what we would normally call office politics?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
Can you
much.
give us a picture of how that looks like from the from our angle? Because you're very much a positive mindset
Mm-hmm.
sort of person, and you know, really deep in that positive psychology, you know,
Mm-hmm.
realm of things. And we see politics, usually workplace politics, as something negative. Can you
Yeah.
tell us how this game changes that perception for us?
Yeah, you know, a lot of times when people start working with me or when they're considering working with me, they'll say, you know, I don't want to have anything to do with office politics. You know, like that's just icky. I want nothing to do with it. And I basically tell them, well, then that means that you're not going to have any influence within your organization. And so
Mhm.
if you can start to think about reframing politics as influence, and then you can begin to understand that when you understand what other people's motivations are, and then you can actually influence them. And different people are influenced by different things. I'll just give you an example of a recent situation with one of my clients that they had had a boss that had been very altruistic, you know,
Mhm.
very much like to help people get ahead. And so they would, you know, work with them on career development and all of that. And the person was very much used to working with that person. Well, that boss left, and the person who has replaced them is somebody who manages up. And
Mhm.
she was saying to me, like, I don't know what to do, because I want to go in and, you know, kind of spill my heart out about, well, she didn't say spill my heart out. I'm this is kind of what I was
Paraphrasing.
reading
Got it.
into it, but that she wanted to approach this new boss in the same way that she approached the old boss and say, like, oh, well, these are my hopes and dreams for my job. And I said, let's stop and think about what motivates this new boss, right?
Mhm.
What motivates the new boss is looking good to their superiors. So I said, you know, you've got to frame the value that you bring to that boss in terms of what's important to him. You know, so the old boss, it was important to him to see the people that reported to him be successful.
Right.
But with the new guy, he could care less
Mhm.
about, unfortunately,
Mhm.
about the success of the people under him. And we can debate whether that's smart or not. You know,
Mhm.
I personally don't think that that's really smart.
Mhm.
But um, when you approach that person and say, well, look, here's what I can do for you, and this is how it's going to make you look good with your bosses, all of a sudden that person is going to see the value that you bring to the table, and um, you know, all of a sudden, like, pay attention.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like it's up to the individual employee or career builder themselves to guide their upward movement in their career.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the not intuitive ways of doing so is to seek out other people's motives, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not just work hard and you'll get promoted. That
Right.
been proven to not be the case. But
Right.
seek out the motives of the people who do have the influence on your career and cater to their motives
Yes.
and thereby direct your upward trajectory in your company or firm. That
Absolutely.
right?
And yes, and I can tell you that one of the counterintuitive mistakes that people often make is that they assume, well, if
Mm-hmm.
I just keep working harder and harder,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm going to get noticed and get promoted. And a lot of times when you work hard, if you become sort of the workhorse,
Mm-hmm.
you might actually get stuck in the
Yeah,
role that you're in
because you're so good at it. Why
because
promote you?
you're so good. Yes, and
Right.
and maybe your boss might even say, well, she likes doing all that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
scut work, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to let her stay in that role. And I kind of look at it like figure out what the highest value work is and focus on that primarily. And, you know, for overachievers, sometimes it can be very difficult not to, you know, be the best at everything. But what's very important is to focus on what's important and not what's urgent. And also to think about the leverage that you get out of your own work. Sometimes, and I think that this is a particular issue for women, because a lot of times as women, we really like to collaborate and we like to, you know, help other people. And sometimes there are people in the office world that seek people out who are people pleasers, and they will come and, you know, try to sort of use social engineering to get you to do more work for them.
Wow.
Oh, I don't know how to do the Excel spreadsheet. Can you do that for me?
Wow.
Or when I used to work in marketing for a big bank, I actually ran marketing for a few businesses. And a lot of times what would happen was when we were working with people in other areas of the business and we would need them to give us things, like say, for example, we needed a spreadsheet of a list or something from, and they'd say, oh, well, we don't know how to do this. Can we just give it to you to do? And I'd say no. You know, and I would tell the people on my team to say no to that, because a lot of times that work that's adjacent to what we need, like we're waiting, and other people won't do their jobs. They say, oh, well, if I just kind of hold off, they'll step across the line and take this work from me. And what happens is when you set a precedent of doing something like that, all of a sudden that does become your job. And so, you know, people get very busy because they're taking on all of this work around them, but it's not work that they actually get credit for because it's not really part of their job.
So I'm going to ask you a question that I can imagine a lot of viewers want to know at this point. When you set that line in the sand and say, I'm not going to take on this work adjacent, this work that I actually need from the other team in order to get my part done, I'm not going to step in and do their work, even if they're pushing the deadline. How do you cover yourself, or how do you make sure that that doesn't affect your own career trajectory when you've drawn those lines in the sand and the other people might be playing chicken with you?
Well, I mean, it's not easy. And the first no is the hardest. And I think it does depend on, or it is important how you say it as well. And sometimes you can use your own leverage. Like if the person that you need something from needs something from you, you can trade that. And I think that that's very important to do. And sometimes people aren't comfortable using the leverage that they have, but it's very important to do that. Because if you don't, you can get taken advantage of. Wow. You know, people are like, oh, well, you know, Terry's nice. I'll just go and ask her to do this for me. And they're not giving me anything, but they're asking me to give them something. So you try to make it a two-way street. And recognize the value that you bring. You know, I don't want to make it like strictly a gender thing, because I work with men and women, and I do see some men have an issue with this too, but I see it pretty commonly with women that, you know, we don't want to make it so people don't like us, right? Like, and sometimes I think we're afraid that like, oh, well, if I tell them no, they're not going to like us, or, you know, they're going to think bad things. And you can say no nicely. You can say, you know what, I have some other priorities today, and if you can wait till next week, I'll see if I can get to that. Sometimes if you just slow walk things, people will figure out how to do it themselves.
Yes.
But, you know, a lot of times we can't tolerate, you know, that concern that, oh, maybe they're not going to be happy with me if I push them off. But we've got to value ourselves. You know, we've got to value our own priorities. And once we value them, other people begin to value them.
Right. Wow. So being able to identify what you bring to the table is a huge precursor to setting those boundaries and being able to stick with them, and even learning how to negotiate and make it a two-way street and other things like that.
Yeah.
This is so good, Terry. I wonder what are some of those other counterintuitive oversights, those things that, we go from school to work thinking if we do the same thing that got us through school,
Mhm.
okay, then we'll do great at work. But then it turns out that that's not the case.
Well, I mean, I think that over investing our time and effort in things is a big mistake that a lot of people make,
Mhm.
because a lot of times you just need to get the job done. It actually doesn't need to be perfect.
Mm.
And I'll just give you an example of something that happened a number of times whenever I was working, that people on my team would come in and I'd have a one-on-one meeting and they'd say, oh, I'm so stressed out. I took my computer home over the weekend and I did all of this work, and I would say, well, why? Why did you do that? Oh, well, I felt like I needed to have this done. And I actually didn't appreciate that, because sometimes if you fill in the gaps, and then it makes it difficult for the manager to make the case that more resources are needed.
Yeah.
A lot of times people that have been excellent students at school, they burned the midnight oil to get those grades and that kind of thing. But when you go into the workplace, I'm not saying don't work hard, but be be thoughtful about where you invest your time.
Mhm.
Don't invest your time in making everything excellent.
Mhm.
Invest your time in making the important things excellent,
Wow.
and try to get by with the least amount that you can on the things that aren't that important, or try to delegate those
Mhm.
to other people. And whenever I think about my early days in the workplace, whenever I would be comparing myself to other people and I'd say, well, why are they getting ahead
Mhm.
and I'm not? I feel like I'm working really hard. And it was because they were doing what I just said. They looked and said, what is valued by the people who are in charge?
Right.
And they were focused on delivering excellence in those areas,
Mhm.
and they were not maybe paying as much attention to some of the things that weren't as important.
Right. Wow. That is a huge gem. And that by itself could turn a person's work life completely around.
Yeah.
Now, I get the idea that a lot of your material, even for this book, has come out of the work that you do today. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do today?
Yeah, I work with really and I work with people on three different types of scenarios. I
Mhm.
work with people who are employed, who want to be more effective in their roles. So a lot of what I teach is, I call it the leverage points,
Okay.
really to, like, how do you get the maximum leverage out of what you do?
Okay.
And it is, getting comfortable with saying no,
Mhm.
about prioritizing, how to delegate, how to communicate, how to deal with conflict. Um, and then I also deal with people who are in job search. And then finally, I deal with the people that are sort of at a crossroads. They're employed, they're not sure if they want to keep doing what they're doing or if they want to pivot and do something different. And sometimes people decide that they do want to do something different, and I'll help them figure out, like, okay, how can we package your skills and reposition you to do something different? But I'd say that a lot of times when people feel like they're not happy in their job and they start to learn these skills, they fall back in love with their job, because
Wow.
it's not really that they don't like the job. It's just that they're feeling a little stressed and they haven't known how to succeed, because they need to develop some new skill sets.
Wow. This is a very interesting. So I imagine the people in that on that path, their lives just do a 180 as far as their happiness quotient is concerned.
Well, one of the things that I see is a lot of times when people get promoted, they do not promote themselves mentally. They,
Uh-huh.
maybe they've been an individual contributor, or they've, managed a small team, and then they get promoted to a higher level, and they try to use the same skills that they used in their previous role at their higher example. And actually, I have an example that I talk about in the book,
Mhm.
and it's based on a client that I worked with, where she managed a team of 8, and she had sort of grown up in the functional area she was in. So she, if say somebody was having trouble with a project, she could just jump in and take the project off their desk and keep things moving ahead. Well, she got promoted to be the manager of a department of 50. And when she started working with me, she was working like 70 hours a week. She was taking work home with her. She was so stressed out because she was trying to run a department of 50 the same way that she did running a team of 8.
Right.
And so we really stepped back and really looked at, okay, what systems does she need to put in place? You know, what kind of training does she need to do? What kind of expectations does she need to communicate to the people that report to her? And she really needed to step back and do less, not do more.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that is, I remember when I hit the stage where I needed to learn those very same things. And it made a huge difference in my happiness level when I realized, oh, I needed to also promote my skill set, my thought patterns, my managing style. So yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I imagine a lot of people who are entering the workforce may fall under the management of somebody who has a similar struggle that needs to learn how to change their style. In the meantime, the manager is stressed out, and the incoming, let's say, attorney for my crowd is trying to figure out how to make this person happy, or how to get the help that they need while that person is so stressed out, how to move ahead and feel confident in their job, even though they're new, but they're not getting any mentoring. How would you, what would you suggest to someone coming in like that?
Ah, boy. Well, in a situation like that, I mean, honestly, it sounds like the manager probably could use a coach.
Right.
But, you know, it's interesting because the reason why people micromanage is because they don't trust the people under them, you know, and really they need to focus on, that person needs to focus more on like clear communications, training, delegation. But a lot of times they're like so on the people that report to them they don't give their subordinate enough room to maneuver and to be able to provide that value. I think that if you are the subordinate, what's really critical is to you know, get very clear on what the expectations of the managers are. I don't know if I'm not sure if I have the if I'm using proper grammar there, but and to really build trust. So, you know, find something small that you can ace, and, you know, over time, hopefully continue to get clear on the expectations. And typically when somebody is micromanaging like that, once you prove yourself, they back off a little bit and they can relax. I think that it's important, and I mean, I wish that every manager understood that it's like if they invest the time in managing, like having regular one-on-one meetings and, you know, having that forum to communicate expectations and answer questions, that a lot of times they don't need to micromanage, you know, because the people that report to them are smart. Right. They just need guidance, right, and the room to do their jobs. But if the manager is not doing that, as a subordinate, sometimes you can ask for that, or you can just proactively say, okay, on a weekly basis, I'm going to send you a list of the things I'm working on. And, you know, please give me feedback if you want me to be working on something different.
Right, right. In your book, you mentioned high achievers are really dependent on external validation. And I'll have to say that characterizes a huge segment of the law student and law graduate population, right? That this is how we've gotten as far as we've gotten. But it is true that at some point you either end up really, really dissatisfied and empty and yet seeming successful.
Right.
Or you figure out sooner, hopefully sooner, that to shift your guidance system away from external and more towards internal. So my question to you is, when you consider the high achieving type of people that graduate from law school and go into the legal field, how would you, especially when external cues still matter. Your
Hmm.
boss winning a case, etc.
Yeah.
Those things
Yeah.
all. How would you suggest that they start to turn more inward?
Well, I think that it's important to start to get in touch with whether you think you're doing a good job or not,
Mhm.
and to get used to, or like start to tolerate switching back to your own internal judgment system, I guess,
Mhm.
because I mean, I have an MBA, and working in banking, a lot of people that I worked with had advanced degrees and went to really, good schools. So I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to, when we're in school, we're so focused on what does the teacher want? What do I need to do extra credit? The business world is different, right? I mean, we can, you can win a case through many different ways, right? And you have to think about, like, okay, there's different strategies that can be used to get the same result. And so I think it's a matter of, I suppose, in the beginning, taking your cues from leadership, but starting to step back and look at the big picture yourself and make your own judgments about what you think is going on. I mean, if you want to advance in the business world, or in big law, or small law, you need to kind of craft your own roadmap, and
Yeah.
you need to start making your own judgments about how you're going to play.
Mm.
And you know you won't move into a leadership role until you start doing that.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not going to be probably, okay, the first year. You're going to have to go in and kind of get a feel for the people around you. But when you see an opportunity, take some chances. you
Mhm.
know um, be willing to step up and let yourself be seen. Provide your ideas.
Right. Right. Wow. And in so doing, you're mapping out, if you map out your roadmap for your career first, then you'll be able to see those opportunities that pop up and take them. And then you're showing yourself as that potential leader, that that you are
Yeah.
promotable in that
Right. Right.
firm. It sounds so great. And this is really key to a lot of new careeristas who are
Yeah.
trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I actually move forward and I'm not just punching a clock every day? How do I?
Yeah. I honestly, I think it's all about context. And I
Mm,
think that a lot of times we're so close, to, um, like, so keyed in on, like, what does my boss want? What does a partner want?
mhm,
What does my law professor want?
mhm.
That we don't step back and look at the bigger picture, and also check in with ourselves to
Mhm.
say, does this fit with what I want out of my life?
Right, right.
Because there's a lot. I mean, I know with in law, I mean, there's so many different ways that you can manage your career. I mean, you can do
Yes.
big law, you can set up your own practice, you can go in house and work as of counsel or something like that.
Hmm.
Or you can do something completely different. It doesn't even have to be. I mean, I've run across investment bankers that were lawyers,
Hmm.
that they weren't even using their,
Degree.
well, not directly using the
Right.
degree.
Got it. Yeah. I was very impressed by an attorney whose last name is Gallagher, I forget her first name, and she now heads up one of the hugest coaching companies
Hmm.
in North America, and she was an attorney for many many
Hmm.
many years, decades,
Yeah.
and just decided to go that route, and is doing very well there. So this is very true. So our career paths can lead anywhere that's fulfilling
Hmm.
once we switch to being able to sense our internal you know, cues and inspirations, and to be able to follow those. Sounds
Yeah.
great. The last question I'd like to ask you touches on one of the groups of people you say you work with. And you said you work with those who are career searchers, or who are
Hmm.
searching. And I'd like, if you may, what are some of the most common things that you have to teach them or impart to job seekers or career starters when you work with them?
Well, I think that the most important thing is to get clear on what you want. you know, because a lot of times when people are getting out of school, they feel a real pressure to get a job.
Mm.
I feel like I was very fortunate when I first graduated from college that my boyfriend's mom gave me the book, What Color's Your Parachute? And she said, do not start interviewing until you read this book and you do all the exercises in it. And
Wow.
I felt a lot of pressure. I wanted to get a job and start making money. And I was so thankful that she encouraged me to do that, because it allowed me to, look at what I was good at and what I like to do, and understand my strengths in a way that when I finally did, kind of set off in a certain direction, that I could talk with, I don't know, like wisdom about what I was good at.
Yes.
And I think that really helped me. And it also put me on a path towards, I ended up being a marketer. I did that for 30 years. And it was a great career for me before I started doing coaching. But, I actually coach a lot of people now that, got on a path, just got a job doing something, and they were smart enough to do it well, but they didn't like it. And they did it for 15 or 20 years. And then they wake up and they're like, I hate my job.
Yeah.
This is what all my experience is in. How do I pivot? It's better to understand where you're going from the beginning than to get way too far down the path and then try to hop on to another path.
Absolutely. Beautiful, Terry. I love that. That is one of the biggest pieces of advice that somebody who is making that transition from, bar taker to new lawyer needs to look at is map out, what it is that you want and how that sits with you in your heart, so that you ensure that you're doing something you'll still be happy with later on down the road. A lot of attorneys boomerang back to the beginning when they realize they've been practicing 15 years in an area of law they so do not like.
Yes.
And yet, because there's no experience in any other area of law, it's really hard to make that switch, especially if economics plays a factor in
absolutely
going back to an entry-level salary by switching areas of law. This is a big thing. And I have to admit that I've seen a lot of my own coaching clients get stalled at the bar exam stage because it pushes off that dilemma of making a decision of what I'm really going to get into, because they're so terrified of making a mistake with that.
Of course, it's totally understandable. I really recommend that people, sit with what they think they want to do, and then go out and find somebody who's doing it and talk to them, in depth about, like, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What were the surprises? What would somebody who might want to come into this area of law need to know?
Yes.
And, I think a lot of times there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of fear when people are, it's a big leap, right? You've invested a lot in your education, and that you've most of the time made a bet that you're going to make a good amount of money to be able to pay back the loans or whatever. And, I really say to people that, like, what you want to do matters. And if you have a passion for something, you're going to be so much more successful at it than if you, follow the, common, not, I don't know, like, what do they say? Common knowledge. I don't know. Follow the common knowledge. I don't think that's the right thing, but conventional wisdom. That was what I was looking for. Because conventional wisdom, I mean, that's not personal.
Right.
You've really got to tap into what makes you special, and believe that there is a path for you if you're passionate about something. And if you get clear on that, you can make it happen.
Absolutely. And this is how we ensure career-long success and satisfaction and overall life happiness, as opposed to your career sucking the life out of you.
Right.
And you're trying to make up for it outside of work, but that equation never quite balances out.
Well, that's what I talk about, working with people that are successful but not satisfied. Like they're making money, they got the right title, blah, 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 but they're
Yeah.
not happy.
Right.
And, that's not a great life.
No, no. And
you
it
know?
characterizes a lot of attorneys,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
So
definitely.
hopefully this here short snippet into your world has given viewers a way to ensure that they're stepping out and starting their careers in a way that will allow for long-term success and satisfaction.
Well, I hope so, because I mean, my purpose is for people to be happy and successful.
Right. Oh, beautiful combination. So where can viewers learn more about you, get your book,
Mhm.
get in touch with you? Can you tell us?
Yeah, my website is terrybmcdougall.com.
Mhm.
My book, which I'll show it to you, it's right here. My book is available on Amazon. I
Yay.
have it as a paperback and an ebook. I'm going to be coming out with an audio book later on this year. So if anybody wants to know anything more about me, you can sign up for my newsletter at my website or contact me by my website, terrybmcdougall.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry, for being here, for talking about your book, and for helping all those around the globe who are starting in on their careers so that they can live a life that's both happy and successful. Thank you,
Yeah,
Terry.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.